Hello, everyone. Today is December 15th, 2021. This is the Kubernetes Data Protection Working Group meeting. Today, we have one main thing on the agenda. Rona is going to talk about his proposal on volume mode conversion again, addressing the feedback that he got from the previous meeting. So I think that's the main thing. And then if anyone else have anything else that you want to talk about, you can add to the open issue section. So I will stop sharing. Ronak, you can get started.
Hey, thanks, Xing. Hi, everyone. Let me just share my screen and we can get started. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh, okay, that's kind of weird. Okay, let me try this again. Hey, hey, Xing, sorry, I think I got kicked out for some reason when I
want me to? I can share it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I don't know why it's not working from my end.
Okay, is your computer, right? Not like.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I think it's this one.
Yeah, perfect. So, hey, everybody, let me just start off with some background about the problem, and then I'll sort of speak about what feedback we got from the last meeting, and then some sort of solutions that we've sort of come up with in the recent past, and then, of course, it's always open to discussion. So the main issue that we have is that currently we don't have any logic at the Kubernetes layer which validates whether the volume mode of a PVC, which is being restored from a snapshot, matches the volume mode of the snapshot that was taken. So what I mean is a user can currently create a PVC with the volume mode of block, and then do a bunch of stuff to, like, write malform data to it, take a snapshot of this volume, and then restore the volume with, restore the snapshot into a PVC with the volume mode of file system. So currently there is no sort of CVE or whatever that makes the system vulnerable to this sort of issue. But we do want to sort of prevent any future CVE from exposing this vulnerability, right? And the reason we can't just block this particular operation is that there are backup vendors which sort of actually use this process, this process of restoring or of restoring with a change in the volume mode. They actually use that legitimately to do the backups, to do their backups more efficiently. So it's sort of a valid use case in some cases, but an invalid use case in most cases. So Xing, can you just scroll down? Yeah, a little more.
Before that, I think there were some questions from Michelle.
So yeah, I actually haven't got the time to. I just saw her comments just before this meeting.
But okay, so like this high level diagram. So I remember Fang has a diagram that talks about this, right? Do you Fang? I thought you have some diagram talking about. Is Fang here? I thought Fang is on the call. I'm just thinking maybe
I was on mute. Sorry.
Okay, I thought you have some diagram. Maybe we can just draw something similar.
I do not have it on top of my. I
I remember you. Yeah, not right now. I'm not asking to share right now. I'm just saying. I remember you have something, right?
Yeah, we did an experiment in which we create the volume is.
Your volume is very low. Can you speak louder or?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, just a little low, but it's fine.
Okay, so the workflow is that we in the backend storage is a block storage, but when we expose it to the Kubernetes, it is a file mode in the file system mode. So when we do backup in the backend, we do it in like a block mode. So there might be some conversion back and forth, so that it would, if you want to do like a differential snapshot, it will be more efficient to do it in using the block mode. Then that is the whole generic idea behind that mode transferring back and forth between when we do a backup and when we restore it and so on and so forth, to make it efficient using the backup and restore for differential snapshot. For the full volume snapshot, this makes no difference. So that is just some background behind the logic.
Okay. So there's another question from her. Basically, is I think we don't really have capabilities for this. Oh, actually we do, right? We do have the capabilities to say whether you do. So like in your backup software, do you actually check so you know that is the block, can you make this conversion or not before you are doing this? I guess, how do you make the decision? Because if it's a file share, right? So if it's a file system, then it's a file volume, then you cannot really do this conversion. Do you have to do some check before that? How do you make the decision? I guess that's the question.
I don't remember the particular check that we do. I think we were in the experimental phase at that point. So we only try to experiment what workflow is possible if we want to do it backup more efficient. And that is the story behind that. When we go to the implementation phase, we will check more on that type of thing.
Okay. So how do you support file volumes already, or that's like a future?
As of right now, we do not we do not have support for the block PVC yet. We only have the file volume on the support for our PVC.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can talk about that offline later. I just saw this questions. All right.
Can I ask a question about the security concerns?
Yes.
So look, let's say if we have a file system volume and then we mount it in a block mode, would there be any security problems if the volume is mounted read-only as opposed to like read-write? So you can, write some executables or do something like.
I think
would that alleviate the problem?
I think that I remember. Okay, maybe Yang, since you will discover this problem. I think even if it's a
for read-only, it wouldn't cause a security threat, and that would be enough for doing a backup. But when you do a restore, you have to be able to write in block mode, and that's when the security threat emerges, is at restore time.
The issue is in kernel when it parses the metadata from the disk. It doesn't really matter if
I'm sorry, you're saying it doesn't matter whether it's a read-only or what do you say?
I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that like the backup software, when they do restore, right, they're not executing any code, they're not running anything. So even if
restore, basically that's actually, if you read this one, right, so it's actually you're actually creating a volume, right? So then the pod tries, the crash happens when Kubernetes tries to mount it. So
I'm just
happens.
concerned about crashing.
Yeah, the specific security threat is if you write a malformed file system into a block volume and then you convert it back to a file system volume by snapshotting it and cloning the snapshot. When the kernel tries to perform the mount on the malformed file system, you can exploit security vulnerabilities in the kernel, either by crashing the kernel or taking it over. You know, there's various theoretical security problems.
Aren't we always going to do an FSCK before mounting though? So the crash should be okay.
No, it's not. These people, they can bypass FSCK.
Well, the other problem is FSCK can only check for bugs that you already know about. And if you knew about the bug, you probably would have fixed it in the kernel.
Exactly.
Well, I think there's two different things. Right? So straight up crashing, FSCK should fix unless, you know, I mean, because basically anything you could do by hand, you could get by random, you know, just random corruption, right?
Right, but there's lots of undiscovered bugs in file systems.
I agree.
Those are the ones you worry about.
I agree, but you know, it's like let's at least be, you know, take a look at what the steps here. So it's not just going to blindly mount; it is going to FSCK at first.
Maybe. So it depends on the CSI plugin.
Yeah, and even if FSCK, even if you do FSCK, there were some CVEs where FSCK was okay, and you can still crash the kernel.
well, anyway, we're talking about this as a potential. So I don't think we, you know, because we don't really have a real case that we want to prove here, but we want to avoid this from happening if there is any possibility, right? So that's why this is not a high priority thing, but we still want to fix it because we do do this mount, right? So that's a pretty high privileged.
Right. It's theoretical, I guess, at this point of time, right?
Right. We have not really have any issue so far. So
Yeah.
Well, it's theoretical, except that historically there's been a constant trickle of these kinds of bugs.
Right.
So
That's
it's
why we
reasonable to expect more will be found.
Right. So that's why we still want to find something, but it's not like, okay, we need to get it fixed tomorrow, right? So, but we do want to find a solution. That's why we're working on this one.
Doesn't volume populator also run directly into this?
Populator.
No, because the volume populator doesn't rely on being able to convert from file system to block and vice versa. I mean, one could write a volume populator that did that. Yes, potentially.
Yeah.
But out of the box, volume populator just says, you know, populate this volume, and you can directly populate file system volumes as file system volumes and block volumes as block volumes.
We could probably have potentially any other problem as well, which is we don't really know what that is, right? We don't
yeah, but
a lot of possibilities there.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are going to be able to use it for, you know, doing block level backups, right? Or block level restores.
The populator mechanism itself doesn't do anything magical at that layer. It just creates a mechanism for the Kubernetes API to say, you know, make a new volume and don't bind it until something else runs on it. And then the something else can do whatever it wants. And so, you know,
actually,
there are lots of use cases.
I do have a question for that one though. Is this the wait for first consumer thing? That's actually also optional, right? That's not like, is that a required? Because I actually tried your populator code. I see the PV is bound before the pod is created. So you still have, it's like you support both, right? It's not like it has to be wait for first consumer, correct?
If the PVC that the user created has wait for first consumer set, then the populated PVC will behave the way you would
that's
expect.
My question, because I was actually trying the thing. I found it's actually already bound before I have a pop. Okay,
yeah. But if you use a storage class that has wait for first consumer or something, then
it should work.
Then it will wait. We will wait for the pod to show up before doing the population.
Okay. Right. Yeah, probably let's get back to this one. So
let me just speak briefly about the changes to the volume snapshot content API as part of this proposal.
Do
and
you want
then
to move to this page? Or
yeah, the next page.
okay.
Yeah, perfect. So basically, there are a couple of changes in the snapshot content API as well as the snapshot controller, because currently there's no like communication of the volume mode between PVC snapshot or snapshot to PVC. So the basic idea is that we would add this the source volume mode to the snapshot content structure, which is basically added. Sorry, so it's added to the spec, and then Xing, if you can just scroll down a little.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So so then the snapshot controller is going to create the snapshot content, right? So when it creates the snapshot content, it's going to populate the spec of that snapshot content with the volume mode of the persistent volume. And I've actually given just a bunch of references where currently in the code, the snapshot controller actually has access to this information. It just doesn't do anything with it. And these changes, before I move on, any questions? I think we spoke about this last time as well. Right, so these changes are actually going to help us with preventing like illegitimate changing of the volume mode. And last time we actually spoke of two sort of potential proposals to how we should handle it. So basically the idea was, do we introduce a new CRD with a bunch of users which would be allowed to sort of change the volume mode, or do we also introduce a new verb, which is something I think someone brought up, where you can actually add a new verb and then sort of modify the RBAC of a given user and stuff like that. So I guess I haven't gone into a lot of detail in terms of what the exact implementation would be in this table. But my idea is just to sort of have a side-by-side comparison, and then just discuss the pros and cons of either approach. So starting with just a new CRD. Again, the names and stuff are just not really thought through, so don't give that too much. Don't think into that too much. But the idea is that basically we introduce a new CRD where the spec contains a bunch of users. Now the users can be individual users or I guess even service accounts. And the idea is that the admin is going to create or modify the CRD with the bunch of users that are allowed to change the volume mode. So in this case, if the admin knows that there's a backup vendor and they have they're using this service account or this particular user, they'll add that to the CRD. And we'll also sort of introduce an admission controller as part of this implementation, which is going to intercept requests to create PVCs. And basically, when a request comes in to create a PVC, this admission controller is going to sort of compare the volume mode of the snapshot. I mean, first of all, it's going to validate whether that PVC is being restored from a snapshot. If yes, then go ahead and compare the volume mode of the two. As we spoke about just a few minutes ago, this volume mode is now present in the snapshot content as well. And if they don't match, then the admission controller basically reads this new CRD and validates whether the requesting user is present in the list of so-called allowed users. If that user is, then there are no problems. It sort of allows that creation to go through, and if there are problems, then it rejects the creation of the PVC. Any questions?
So this method is actually quite similar to what you proposed last time, except that now we capture everything in a CRD, right? So
no, so actually last time we spoke about an annotation, adding an annotation to
right. That's what I'm saying.
To the,
so for in that approach, right, there was annotation. Now everything's captured in a CRD, so we don't have to worry
so
about.
It's one, right? It's one sort of
everything
place.
else, like all of this seems to be pretty similar.
Yes, you're right.
I was
And I
just
think
thinking,
Ben brought up this issue of mutability, right? What if a user is added or removed or whatever?
right.
This sort of addresses that as well.
So does this one allow, so this one can be updated basically? Is that the thing?
Right, yeah.
This is immutable?
And it's mutable, yeah.
Okay.
And every request to create a PVC is going to go and look at this list. So yeah, it's immutable in that way.
So I would ask on this, is there any other models where security stuff is being handled by lists of users in a CRD, in a CR?
Not that I'm aware of right now.
So that would be a very strong argument to not do it this way.
Well, so
I think there are, but I need to find out. I believe I've seen somewhere, but I couldn't remember exactly what that is right now.
Yeah, I just advise that anytime we start looking at security, that when you start introducing a new model, you're introducing a whole set of new threats.
Yes, it's basically a new way to do RBAC, which is quite different from the rest of Kubernetes.
Right.
But also have like scopes and stuff as well, like just that allows you to give a user a credential that says act like user X, but only have these scopes. And so if it's just a list of users, we're not taking into consideration scopes and things. Isn't that potentially problematic?
Hey, sorry, can you just repeat that about the scopes?
Sure. So, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I think the argument is any system that piggybacks on the RBAC system gets to take advantage of all the weird tricks you can play with RBAC, where you can have like a user impersonating another user, or a user with a, with the scoped token that has a subset of what a user can do. Like there's all sorts of magic inside the RBAC system. And if you step outside of it and just say, well, this user can do this, then it won't be congruent with what the RBAC system would have done under the same circumstances.
Yeah, I guess my question was, how do you authenticate the user to compare it to this list? Because if you authenticated the user using RBAC systems, then you could be having a OAuth token that's scoped down that doesn't actually give them access to this. Like, and then now you just allow somebody to like do something they probably shouldn't have been able to do, right? Because you just compared a name to a name instead of comparing like the full
Right, yeah.
authorization stuff that the user has.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So the RBAC seems like a reasonable way to go. Is there a reason not to do a new verb other than it's a pain to get it through?
What new verb are you talking about? Which verb we create? I guess
it says introduce a new verb to grant users access to the policy.
Right.
On the
RBAC
side.
Which resource?
The proposal for that was to follow the example of security context constraints in OpenShift, where
that's this one, right? That's this one on the right hand side.
So
right.
we could follow that model.
So the problem with this one, I see potential. Well, I look at this one, see this one looks very similar to what we were trying to propose earlier with this. It's exactly the name, volume security policy. We were looking at this one earlier, it got rejected because we want to follow this is like pod security policy. So we want to follow pod security standard, but then pod security standard got rejected by SIGAuth because that's too complicated. Yeah, so that's why when I'm looking at this approach, I think we have the same issue that the reason that we got rejected by going to this the new security standard thing, which is actually should be a replacement of this one. The comment we're getting from Jordan is that you are trying to solve a tiny little small use case, but you are trying to come up with a very complicated approach. It's really not necessary. So yeah, so I think I'm looking at this one. We are actually looking at the OpenShift, the document. I mean, I think it's good to add that, but then we have to come up with tons of use cases. Right now, we do not. That's the problem. We're trying to solve this one problem, and then we are coming up with a very comprehensive approach that can solve like hundreds of problems, which is not approved.
Well, I think the counter argument to Jordan would be that if you want to do it right, you have to do it right.
Well, then you have to come up with, then you have to come, then we have to first imagine some cases, right? If you guys can help with a list, give us a list of, yeah, we can actually do it right now. Why don't you guys help? Maybe you can think about like, what are the things that we want? So right now, this is one use case. That was the main reason he rejected it right away, right? So
right, but within this use case, there's two specific.
It's just not enough, right? So that's
within
the
one use case, there's two specific issues, which is
I don't
one.
want to, you know, go waste time on things like that's already rejected, right? So if we really think we have a better reason to say, hey, we have to go back to, then we go back to this other thing, the security standard.
If you care about the ability to.
Okay, use cases, right? So this is the use case. We only have one use case right now. Sorry.
Wait, I think I understand what you're saying, that previously this has been something similar to what we're proposing has been rejected. But I think that the current proposal that we're asked, that is the alternative to the one that has been previously rejected, I think has some problems that we would have to address.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're not
before we
addressing
can,
that, right?
So like,
but I'm just saying,
list of
why
users,
do you want to jump? I
okay.
just thinking that we don't necessarily want to jump to this one. Right now I don't see I don't see we have
yeah,
enough.
I think that makes sense.
Yet, I guess.
I think that makes sense, but then can you help us brainstorm how you would, instead of using a list of users, use the entire RBAC like authorization scope of a user to compare in that situation? Because if we're going to say that like the other one is the one that you think we should do, then can we brainstorm on that then?
Okay, so if you let me finish one thing.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I just started hearing you. Were you talking?
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, my network dropped out, and I worry I can have continuing issues. But no, what I was trying to say before is, like, if we want to do this and we want to maintain the property where you can change the policy for existing volumes and snapshots, for example, adding new users,
your voice
and
is
you want the property that
broken. Hello?
Ben, you're breaking up.
All right, my network
has some
problems.
Okay, so it looks like we lost Ben.
Hello?
Yes.
Is anyone there? I'm really sorry about my network connection.
Okay. You're kind of your voice is kind of floating.
All right. Yeah, I'm using a bad microphone at the moment, and I'm sorry about that. Real quick, I'll try one more time and then give up. If we want to maintain the property that you can change the policy after the fact, in terms of like adding new users who can do this for using volumes and snapshots.
Can you start?
The property that you can grant permission to new users on existing snapshots. If you want that property and you want the property that you expect the RX to so far as
it's hard to follow you. I'm sorry.
I think he said, and maybe Ben can just say yes or no after this, but I think what he said was
that if you wanted the property that you could add new users to use the existing one after it was created, and you wanted the he has had another thing. I'm sorry. But I think there was another property that he also said.
I think he meant use the advantages of RBAC was the
use
second
the
property.
thank you. Yep. Those two properties, then we would, it seemed to me that he was advocating that the verb with the CRD would be the more appropriate approach to do those particular use cases.
The verb and CRD, this one also adding a new CRD and a new verb, right? This is also have the, you need to have a verb for those as well. This is actually also have a new, I think the title is not, is misleading. Actually, both introduce new CRDs. It's just the left one is narrower. It's just focusing on this one use case. The one on the right hand side, basically it was trying to handle a lot more use cases. This, because the one on the left hand side also introduced new verbs and new CRDs.
No, but on the left, we don't have the use or whatever verb we want to call it, right? That just uses the existing.
The use. Okay, this one, but this one you also have the, those.
We just have the CRD, right?
Okay, you're saying, you're saying this is the use verb.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess that's the thing that I'm not seeing that is absolutely necessary.
Right, because so actually, yeah, what you said earlier was right, that it's quite generic, right, which is what we were told a little earlier. So if we can come up with use cases, or if we can come up with solution for the only CRD, one of those two would work, right?
But and one thing I want to, anyone here familiar with the Red Hat's this security context thing? And maybe Yang's familiar with that. How is that different from the, the pod security policy?
It is basically the same thing as what security policy.
Yeah, well, then that's fabricated. We can't. That's why the reason. That's what I'm thinking. It's similar. We have already went this route.
Just to be clear, just to make sure that, like, real quick, just because the CRD or the type is deprecated doesn't mean that the pattern of having a use verb
the pattern is
deprecated.
The whole thing is deprecated. We should, if we look at that one, we should actually look at the pod security standard. If we look at that one, we want to say, can we do this? Then we actually should look at a volume security standard, which was something that we looked at earlier. That's what I'm saying. Yang knows this, right? He said this is the same as the pod security policy.
The idea is the same. Like the implementation is different, but the idea is
the same. Yeah. So I don't want to go follow something that's Kubernetes has deprecated, because now so Yang, are they now since now we have this new pod security standard, now is Red Hat going to change this to go with security standard thing, you think?
I can't comment on that.
Okay. Yeah, but at least for upstream one, right? Let's say purely, supposedly you would support a pure Kubernetes distro as well, right? So whatever is used by pod security standard, then you will have to support that at least, correct?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, I just
we will still have our.
You will have some transition plan in the future, I'm guessing.
I think we will support both, and
both. Okay.
The user has to choose like one of them.
I see. Okay.
But actually, has anybody looked at the security standards?
Well,
the security standard,
we actually look at that. Well, we just I think Ronak was trying to come up with the volume security standard that that's the one of the rejected proposals.
Yeah, if you scroll down a little.
Yeah.
So this was actually based on the pod security standards. Very similar.
What is your question, Yang? I think Yang has a different question.
Yeah, I have a very different question. So can we just, do we know at the admission time if the security, no, it's pod, damn.
Yeah, it's pod. We can't directly use it, I don't think.
The
I
pod
think
is
we
not
would,
security
yeah,
bound. Sorry,
I
never
was
mind.
initially thinking about, can we just directly use that? But I think it's not the same. I was actually wondering, now at this point, I'm thinking maybe, Ronak, I think we probably need to do some prototyping instead of just going through the series. That may help actually.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Otherwise, I feel like we are going in circles. We're going back to this again. This already like rejected a long time ago, right? So this is the volume security policy. I'm like, okay, we're having the same volume security policy again. Why?
Yeah, I suppose the names are too similar, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Because there are some part will be the same. The certain part, like the webhook, you probably will always need some webhook. So some of the code, no matter which way you go, you probably will need to use that anyway. So some part can probably stay. It's just the beginning part, like how do we introduce this? Should this be a targeted CRD? Use it like this way, or I mean this one. I don't think, but we can definitely do some maybe prototyping and then figure out what's. Or Yang, you have some other suggestions?
Yeah, like, did anybody actually go to SIGAuth and ask what is the standard way how to solve these issues?
Correct. Yeah, that's what we talked about last time, right? So we went to SIGAuth. Okay, I think we have some notes somewhere. Where's the notes, Ronak? We actually Jordan added these notes, I think.
Right, yeah.
All of these are added by
5th.
Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, let's go look at the SIGAuth meeting. We can, you know what? I think we can probably go back to SIGAuth meeting and ask and see what do they think, because they are familiar with this type of things. I still think like maybe some kind of a POC would help, because I think some of the core part of that controller, the webhook, you will need it anyway in any case. So maybe we can think about this one. Or do we just want to go talk about this again? That's fine too. We can talk to SIGAuth before we do this, or maybe we can just ask Jordan to review. How about that? I think that may be more straightforward instead of.
So I don't know how many of you have actually tried the new pod security admission mechanism, but it's based on like setting a default policy in the config file for the controller, and then you set labels on your namespaces, and the labels in the namespaces are authoritative for who can do what. And it's at the namespace granularity, the new mechanism. It's not based on users, so anyone who can create a pod in a particular namespace is subject to the
that's why Jordan says that's
that
not going to.
namespace.
That's why Jordan says that's not going to work, because we actually, if it's just because we can't separate if it's just namespace based, we can say, okay, this person can use this.
Oh, right. Because we want to be able to do this in other users' namespaces across the cluster for backup reasons. So you need to do it at the user granularity. Okay, well, so that's an argument against following the new model.
Okay, yeah. So basically, so just to answer Yang's question, this is the SIGAuth meeting notes where we went there last time, talked about this. We were at that time proposing to do this volume security standard. So there was one reason that we just talked about earlier, that you can't just restrict that at namespace. That's not going to be enough. So Jordan basically saying, hey, you're trying to, also that another thing he was saying is, hey, you're trying to use this very, very complicated approach and to solve this one particular use case. It's not like their case, pod security standard, they have a lot of use cases they want to solve. And then he was saying, why don't we just do something more simple? That his suggestion is just to have the control at the cluster level. So he asked us whether we have a cluster level object that we can use. In our case, it's the volume snapshot content. so basically just to look at it. So that's why I think in
What are
last
the
meeting,
extra auth check for cross mode restore?
cross mode, it's
What's
basically
the other one, the require auth z checks? Sorry about the dog.
Okay, so basically just to check if the user if the user is allowed to do this conversion, and then look at the volume mode matches, right? So I mean, look at if the volume mode is different or the same, and then see whether that's allowed or not. So he was basically just saying, hey, why don't you just do a user webhook, and then having that controlled by the cluster scope resource, you can have that. So that's why last time the proposals in that proposal we added that as an annotation. But then Ben was saying, yeah, the annotation we can see that it's easy to be changed. So it's probably better to have a CRD to have all the information stored. So yeah, so that's actually so the general direction from SIG-auth is just to do this with a webhook, and then use the cluster scoped resource to do the control, because at that level is your admin.
What cluster scoped resource?
Oh, the content, volume snapshot content. So if you look at, okay, so maybe we should back up and look at the previous proposal.
And
you have it?
hold on, what the check would do with the snapshot content?
Okay, let's look at this. Where is that? This one, I think, right? Ronak, you want to go over this one? This is the last time.
The annotation will not work. Like we know that.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. I was just saying that this is because this is trying to. So that's why Ronak has this one, right?
Well, like at the admission, you can do crazy things. You could check if the user who is restoring the PVC, restoring the snapshot, for example, if the user can modify the volume snapshot content without modifying it, just check.
User cannot, right? So it's basically the admin can do it.
Okay,
right.
Can you please let me finish?
Okay, please.
At the admission, the external provisioner can check if the user who is going to restore the snapshot, if he is able, or if the user is able to modify volume snapshot content without modifying it. Just you check the permission. And if the user has this permission, which is pretty huge permission, we can allow cross volume mode restore.
But we're doing this, it's the controllers doing this, right? So
well, okay, so you can do it in admission. You can do it in admission. You can do it in admission too. Well, basically that's the only place where you can do it.
Okay, but I mean, but we still need to have this. We still need to differentiate the users, right? Otherwise,
yeah. The admission webhook has the user information. He knows.
Okay,
the admission webhook knows.
Okay.
Who is creating the PVC?
So the idea is that the admission webhook would veto the creation request if it tried to change the mode and you weren't allowed to do so.
Yeah.
It would just say you can't even create it, and the snapshot would never land.
Yeah. Well, the PVC would never land.
The PVC would never land. Yeah.
You're talking about this is like the restore time, right?
Yeah.
This is like when you're trying to create. Okay, so that's this one, right? So let's take a look at this one. Is that the same or different? Okay.
No, it's very different. It's completely different. Something completely different. Something completely new. Okay.
All right.
There is no policy. There is nothing.
All right.
We allow users to restore to change the volume mode in a PVC only when this user has right access to volume snapshot content. We use this permission to change the volume snapshot content to discover who has permission to restore snapshots with changed volume mode.
So if we're going to use write permission on the volume snapshot contents, why don't we just put the mode flag in the volume snapshot contents and you change it there?
Because if you change it, then a user who can restore snapshots can try to restore it and do bad things.
But you're just saying that they have the right to write to, you're
No.
gating this ability on the right to write to that volume snapshot content.
Users don't have permissions to write volume snapshot contents.
So
They can
they
only
wouldn't be
write volume
allowed,
snapshots.
right? So they wouldn't be allowed to, so nobody would be allowed to do this.
Yeah, but if you have a backup software that flips the mode, the user can use, who can read the volume snapshot content, not write, can detect that, and they could try to restore a wrong snapshot and do bad things to the node.
I understand, but what you're saying is you're going to gate the change on the ability to write to the volume snapshot content.
Yes.
Why not just make it that in order to make the change, you have to write to the volume snapshot content? Then you can avoid all of the weirdness.
Because if we allow, because again, if we allow the backup software to change the volume content, then a user can misuse that to restore a bad snapshot and bring a node down.
In order to do this change, you have to have write access to the volume snapshot content.
But backup software has this write access.
And so therefore it can change things. It can, for example, statically provision a volume snapshot content.
Well, they could, but they don't.
But
that's not
I
true.
think the argument is the only snapshots or the only volumes that will be created in this way and have this power will be ones created by the backup software, and it won't. You have to trust it, right?
Right, but
So,
that's what I'm saying. But you've got a permission on volume snapshot contents. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You're saying if you have this permission, I'm going to let you do something else. Yes.
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 Why not?
So
just
the backup software would only ever set the permission on a snapshot that it created, and therefore there's no opportunity for a bad person to create a bad snapshot.
But if the volume snapshot object is in the user's namespace, they can restore it.
Right, but the snap, it would be a snapshot that was created by a trusted entity.
It doesn't matter. Well, they took a snapshot of something they didn't know. That was it's a snapshot of a PVC with unknown content created by user.
So I agree with Jan that the snapshot process and the backup process are decoupled, and they can be different parties doing it. But I also agree with Ben that there has to be a trust in the backup vendor to do the right thing and not be malicious.
Yeah, sure.
If the backup vendor is malicious, even with the same type of volume, you're going to have problems. Not even with this mixed mode setup.
Well, yeah, and especially when we restore contents from outside.
Right. Look,
well, yeah, if backup vendor, yeah, that of course they can do whatever.
So I'm still trying to understand the attack vector. Like exactly what.
But they're admin. They're like admin, so they can do anything.
Right.
Right.
So I'm still trying to understand this.
Yeah, this is
actually, is this a hypothetical problem, or actually this can happen in practice?
This is actually, well, backup vendor can do anything, to be honest with you. So we are not preventing backup vendor. This is basically for a regular user.
I can give you a concrete example. I am a bad user. I create a block PVC. I dump some bad X4 to that, right? I tell my back, I mark somehow, I don't know how, this PVC for backup. The backup software comes, creates a snapshot in my namespace. I can see the volume snapshot. I can restore it if I want, all right? Now, if the backup software changes volume content from block to file system, I can restore the snapshot.
The backup software wouldn't take an originally raw block volume and convert it to a file system volume, because it would say this volume is not a file system volume. You have to trust that the backup software knows what the original volume type that it backed up was, and that it will keep it that way. But because if the backup software can't enforce that, then even the other scheme still exposes you to attacks by users, right?
Field, right? We're going to introduce that so they can check the snapshot. They can see the original mode.
Yeah,
they know the original.
If the user ever had access to the raw block volume, then the backup software can never trust that volume doesn't have evil data in it, and it has to always treat it as raw blocks.
Okay, that's a good point. I will need to think about that. That's a good point.
So I think that the idea is somehow we're assuming the backup software knows which volumes were supposed to be file system and which ones were not, and would only ever perform this trick for ones that were supposed to be file system ones.
So in that case, like the backup software could change the volume mode directly in the snapshot content, if we allow that in the API. But
that is what they do actually when they are doing backup. That's what they do.
So if we can trust the volume backup software, yeah, I would need to think about it, but maybe it's okay.
But even if it changes it, I don't see a security problem, because let's say if you have a file system volume, and even that the backup vendor doesn't change the content of the snapshot in any way during snapshot, during restore, or during backup or during restore.
Yeah, like the problem is when user has a block volume and somebody restores it as a file system. That's the problem.
But that's never a scenario for a backup vendor. Like it's
that's
the other way around.
Privilege escalation. That's a bug in whatever did that, right?
But no one does that.
Well, I know, but if they did, if something did that, that's a bug in that application. That's a privilege escalation in a privileged utility. And
the question is, how is that different than a corrupt file system scenario with a file system volume? Because that can happen too, like naturally can happen, right? And
like users can't influence that. Like they have access to mounted volume and they can't corrupt it that easily.
So I think the basic issue is, as a non-privileged user, can you go and scribble some data into a file, into a block device, and then make that into a file system that gets mounted and possibly crashes or exposes some other security vulnerability in the system? The privileged users, we're saying, can do this. There's any number of ways you can do this. You can do this by static provisioning. You could static provision a snapshot. So I think we want to be careful to separate the two, privileged and non-privileged users, right? And so for a non-privileged user, do they ever need to be able to do this? And I would argue no. I mean, it's more efficient, but I would say just no. I mean, if you want to do this, if you want to make a non-privileged backup utility, read and write the file system.
Yeah, exactly.
So all we really need to do is block non-privileged users from doing this conversion.
Right, so that's the idea. So Yang, are you saying basically your idea is we don't really need the CRD, we just do this check in the webhook itself?
Yeah, hold on. I think we may not need anything actually. You would just need to store the original. Well, hold on. You would need to store the original mode somewhere in the volume snapshot content.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah, exactly. And then allow some allow the volume snapshot content to be modified by the backend by the backup thingy.
Right, because we can already do that. We can already statically provision.
Oh, that's not going to work though. The snap, because how can that work? You change, you modify, you add a new field in the content, which is the volume mode, and then at the restore time, you.
It has to match.
It has to match. Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, hold on.
And only like
snapshot content. The one in the snapshot content is the one that you copied from the original one, right? Are you talking about the new field? Okay, you know what?
Yeah. Like copy from PC.
Well, actually, I think we're running out of time. Actually.
Yeah.
So, like this one we copied from the original. So this one we still want, right? We still need this.
Yeah.
And then what?
And then what? Like then the external provisioner will check that if it matches the PVC that's going to restore the volume. And we allow only like the backup software to change this field in volume snapshot content. This field can be changed by.
So you are saying in external provisioner, you will check the user if the user.
No users, nothing. Just PVC and the volume snapshot content must match.
And an admission controller would, well, no, the existing permissions prevent bad people from modifying the object, period. We just have to make sure the field is mutable by people that can.
I guess I'm not really getting that. Okay, I think we're actually running out of time, so maybe we need to. Okay, we can get back to this one later. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get back to this one later. All right, Ronak, I don't know if you'll have a follow this, but I think we need to maybe come back and see what exactly Yang is proposing, and then see how that will work. We are already out of time, so all right. I think that's all for today then. Thanks everyone. Hey, bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.